Hello and welcome, everybody. I am your host, Dr. Kathleen Walls, and my co host and co pilot here today is Brian Brogan. Welcome to Family and Finance. Hey, Brian.
Dr. Kathy, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Oh, I'm so glad. So, for people who know, Brian and I have known each other for most of our lives. For people who
Yeah,
don't know, I was actually, sometimes I try to go back to remember like first time when we met someone or when we started hanging out. But you and I have known each other probably since around the fourth grade, or if
fourth. I
not
was just about to
younger.
say fourth grade. Yep.
Yeah.
And we used to ride the bus home together,
Yes.
and
Yes.
uh, we had a passion for sports and student council and everything else, all the above.
All the good stuff, all the
Yeah,
good stuff. So here we are now, and as grown people,
that's right.
and in this
Where did the time go?
I have no idea. I have no idea, but we're here, so that's
That's
all that
right.
matters.
That's
So
right.
now, so tell me this: as far as having a little trouble over here on the Instagram side of life, I don't know what's going on Instagram. Sometimes they tell me I'm live, and sometimes they tell me there's problems, but I'll deal with that in the meantime.
Sure.
So, Brian,
Yes.
tell everyone a little bit about your background.
Sure. Well, if people have heard me speak before, they know that I have a canned joke, which is that my mother was an addictions therapist, and my dad's a stock analyst. And just like children that grow up with doctors in the family, you have a strong conviction of a parent. I fell in love with both of those disciplines. So
Mhm.
they were both what they would call A personalities, very high performers. And I just absorbed one, my love for psychology and the human condition. And that's what you and I share together.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then my father's analytical work and really creative work around technical analysis with the stock market. So
Mhm.
I have a very nice pedigree that my father is very well known in the financial services industry around technical analysis and quantitative data,
Mhm.
really analyzing and really being it's not the perfect title for the word, but an ombudsman or really kind of an advocate for portfolio managers to help them increase conviction over their holdings, whether they are stocks, bonds, or commodities or currencies.
Mhm.
So when you blend those two things together, you get this psychological money thing, right? And I knew there was something there. And I had the great advice from my parents to follow your passion and also try to find a niche in the market that you
Mhm.
can be a big fish in a small pond kind of a thing.
Mhm.
And so that really, I followed my passion. I got my master's in clinical psychology from Chestnut Hill College. Shout out to Chestnut Hill. And
That's right.
I believe that's where you got your PsyD
You
doctorate.
know it. Yep.
We were in the same classes there. So, in clinical psychology and a master's in, especially in addictions, and that was a very strong family program, if you remember, with
Mhm.
Dr.
Very
Browning.
much. Yes.
So, having that, interpersonal relationship, research and about addictions, and really studying kind of dysfunctional, but really kind of families that struggle with addiction or a legacy issue, right? Kind of the
Mhm.
sins of the father, if you will.
Mhm.
And so I very even if you ask me today, Brian, what books do you love? I'm usually reading something about psychology or the human condition
Yeah.
or communication or something like that,
Yeah.
the qualitative parts of human beings. And then I kind of got burned out, and I kind of could see the horizon with managed care and people not getting the service that they needed. So
Mhm.
I was also my mother took retired from therapy and became
Mhm.
an entrepreneur in her late 40s, early 50s,
Mhm.
and that was fantastic. That was opening up a world for me in such a way. So we opened up a couple stores, one in Chestnut Hill and one in Montgomeryville Mall in the
Mhm.
Philadelphia area. And so I took a semester off from college, and that really I got the bug.
Yeah.
I got the business bug because the feedback that I received was I was really good in sales, really good with
Mhm.
people, really good with
Mhm.
marketing, and just management and operation.
Yeah.
Um, there's a great story. We were it's a Canadian franchise which we had, which was called the Soapberry Shop, and I was helping mom set up the display, and I was she would price things, and I'd go right behind her with the price gun,
Mhm.
The old price guns that had the
Yes.
stickers on them,
Yes.
and I would increase the prices
Right.
on everything that she just did. Well, sure enough, I got yelled at, but sure enough, I think I saved the day because we didn't understand the currency exchange between the Canadian loonie and the U.S.
Mhm.
dollar. So if I didn't do that, I think our first
Mm.
quarter would have been negative.
Oh my goodness.
Well, that's the story that I'm sticking with
Now,
anyway.
look, I have to tell you, I'm laughing because, right, I grew up in my father's business.
Hmm.
And as you know, he was one of the first three Black veterinarians in the state of Pennsylvania.
That's
And of
right.
course, like, obviously, then one of the first to open his own practice in 1976.
Hmm.
And so as a child, we would go over, myself and my brothers, and we'd go over and, organize files and so forth, which helped me tremendously with alphabetical order. But
Hmm.
the other thing was creating his price sheets. And so he would tell me what his prices were, and I'd take my Crayola markers and I would increase the prices. So it's
Absolutely.
funny that that's what you did too. And he would be like, no, you can't take it that high. And I'm like, well, let's look at this practically and
That's right.
go through like the service that you're providing and so forth. And his thing was, you want to make things affordable to the community. Yes,
Right.
we can go up that high, and there are places that do, but my goal and focus is to create opportunities and experiences that
Yeah.
are more appealing and open and serving the community. So when we look at this financial personality, this financial DNA, relationship with money, those were early messages that were imprinted in
Yeah,
me.
really is sharing social consciousness with you,
Mhm.
and social
Mhm.
capitalism, and social entrepreneurship, which is
Mhm.
really a big, I teach entrepreneurship at St. Joe's University, and that's one thing that's, part of the curriculum is social entrepreneurship. How do you make and service and provide an offering that's sustainable, not only for you and your family, but for the
Mhm.
community at large?
Mhm. Mhm.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
important. So.
So so real quick, just so that really gave me the bug for in business, and so I
Mhm.
became my father went through the Dean Witter program in 1967 in San Francisco. So I applied in a newspaper ad, kind of a cold reply, and I got an interview for Morgan Stanley Dean Witter, and they really didn't know about my psychology background, but I was able to
Okay.
convince them that I could do a good job. And sure enough, that was really the start back in
Mm.
1999 of a real fantastic career in financial services. So I've
Wow.
held many, many different roles. My family business on my dad's side provides institutional research to institutional money managers, both on the quantitative and technical analysis. And I had worked with him and my brothers for a little bit, so understanding the dynamics of a family business. But really, I was able to be an entrepreneur and start my own RIA back in 2008, 2009,
Mhm.
which was very successful, working with family offices, families with ultra high net worth. But more importantly, they were pulling me in for the family dynamic work around the relationship to money and kind of making sure people are on the same page and kind of
Mhm.
are in alignment with the purpose of their wealth.
Mhm.
So, so that whole thing is really, I've worked in an area which they now call behavioral finance,
Mhm.
which really came out of the economic department. Behavioral finance is really, economics meeting psychology.
Mhm.
But there's a huge, huge personal finance part of that and a psychological part of that.
Mhm.
So I think the psychology department is kind of catching up ground and making some great
Mm.
headways, and that's kind of what we'll talk about today is really the
Yeah.
psychological aspect of your relationship to money. There's a
Mhm.
thing called the Financial Therapy Association, which is gaining membership in a very quick fashion. I would encourage people to check that out.
Mhm.
And so, as we sit today, I work as the head of wealth for Exemplar Wealth Advisors, where we are money managers, but also more
Mhm.
importantly, we're offering not only private client services for our clients, but more importantly, family wealth services around cohesion in the family, communication, governance, share ownership, and really getting in alignment with having a mission statement and a family constitution. And sometimes that
Mhm.
involves me coming in doing family meetings with the family and kind of doing education.
Mhm.
A lot of the clients now are asking for education for their next generation, the
Mhm.
rising generation coming up, and helping them understand the concepts. And we're making some great headways, all of us. There's many states now that are requiring financial literacy in high school
Mhm.
now.
Mhm.
So congratulations. I mean, how many years
Yeah.
has this taken for us to
Yeah.
actually knock on the head, say this is what we need,
Yeah.
instead of geometry and calculus,
Mhm.
which are very important, but paying your mortgage and understanding interest rates is just as important.
Come on, it's huge. And I have to tell you, I mean, for years, as children have graduated from eighth grade that I've worked with, and I ask them, almost kind of like exit interviews, what did you think about your time here? What are you worried about, and so forth. And I always remember this one young lady, and this had to be almost 7 years ago at this point. She said, I enjoyed my time here, but I don't feel as though my teachers taught me how to live my life. Like, I
Mhm.
have no idea about money and budgeting and things like that. And this is a young lady who's graduating from the eighth grade. And these sentiments are sentiments I hear from 18-year-olds who are graduating as seniors in high school, 22-year-olds who have graduated from college. And they're
Mhm.
saying, I don't know how to adult. Like,
Mhm.
what do I do financially? Who teaches you this stuff? And I know, as I've dealt with, my father making his transition and moving into legacy businesses and things like that, it's like there's financial things that I'm literally just learning. And it
Sure.
comes through trial and error. So to have
Yep.
someone such as yourself and businesses such as yourself who are really helping to educate and prepare each of the generations moving forward, it's vital to the
Yeah.
community, to the health and the sustainability of a thriving community.
Yeah, and the work that you do around leadership, education, you and I have worked together on
Mhm.
that with families, and you do a fantastic job,
Thank you.
helping people identify what type of leader they are,
Mhm.
and even answer the age-old question of, are entrepreneurs created or are they born?
Come
And
on.
so that I believe they're both. I believe
Mhm.
there's some people come out with innate skills, but
Yeah.
definitely it's a learned skill, and you can sharpen that axe. And I think the work that you provide also around communication, around the holistic approach to leadership is fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a couple background questions for you
Sure.
before we jump even further in. You
Yeah.
mentioned the term IRA. What does that mean? What does that stand for?
Um, IAR is an
Mhm.
independent advisor rep. Okay.
Mhm.
The RIA is the registered investment advisor. And
Mhm.
I'm glad you bring that up. We didn't script this part. That's for sure.
That's right. And for people who are listening, if you're new to any of my shows, I always encourage you, have a pen and paper ready. All right, because you're going to hear something that you want to make sure you follow up on. Like he said, Financial Therapy Association. That's
Yep.
something new. You want to follow up on it. So he's telling us now between IAR and RIA. A lot of times
Yep.
we hear IRA, right?
Right.
But
Right.
we don't hear the switch around, the Vanna White switch around on these
Yep.
letters.
And it's actually very important because you and I were trained as therapists, so we have a high
Hmm.
level of confidentiality. One, two,
Hmm.
fiduciary responsibility of that
Hmm.
confidentiality, and
Hmm.
fiduciary really means putting your clients above yourself or
Hmm.
before yourself, in
Hmm.
essence. And of course, 2008, we got into a debacle of like Goldman Sachs going in front of Congress saying all of our clients were suitable clients. They were
Hmm.
educated as to the risk profile, and that's all we needed to do. And that
Hmm.
was true to the letter of the law because it's big fish to big fish.
Hmm.
But as soon as you go big fish to small fish, you need to educate that client, right? So you had to
Come
have a
on.
fiduciary relationship.
Hmm.
So it's very important that you ask that question because it's a legal title to be a registered investment advisor, just like
Hmm.
it's a trademark for to be a certified financial planner, right?
Hmm.
And they
Hmm.
both hold very high level of fiduciary ethical standards of
Yes.
making sure that you're not going to churn a person or, have them do activity just for the sake of creating a fee or commission, but
Hmm.
that you really are taking a holistic approach of their goals, short-term, intermediate, and long-term goals, and understanding their lifestyle, their risk profile, and their personality. And in doing that really discovery work, which is the same as you do kind of in therapy to get to know somebody and their history of origin, and their family of origin, this is the same kind of approach that you would have. So for me, the transfer into the wealth space was easy because I already
Hmm.
had a high level of fiduciary and ethical standard.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Good
so if
point.
you're a registered investment advisor, you have a Series 65, and you're a fee-based advisor. Basically, you can charge for fees under management
Hmm.
versus commission, right?
Hmm.
Commission's more for suitability, and they're both appropriate at different times.
Hmm.
So A individual advisor rep works under a RIA. Just to
Okay.
me, yeah. So I'm an individual advisor rep with the RIA of Exemplar Wealth.
Mm,
Yeah.
got you. Got you.
So yeah, but it's a good question to ask your financial advisor if they have their certified financial planning or if they
Mm-hmm.
have advanced designations that are equivalent.
Right. All right. So one of the things I know when Brian, my brother
Yeah,
Brian, was on the first Family and Finance show, one of the things we talked about was the fact that there were a lot of financial pieces that we weren't aware of. And even though we went to the same school, my brothers went to great schools, it was a lot of times in other families, visiting other families, that we started to learn terms, right? We
yeah,
started to hear different financial things that we need to know of.
yeah. The
Our
jargon.
family, yes, and our family was blessed with having a financial advisor very early on. So that is
Oh, that's
something that
great.
I grew up with.
Wow.
Um, so, but that's not everybody's reality,
No,
right?
no.
So, how do people even know who to turn to, who to ask about things like this? Is this something they should be Googling? Should they go to the bank first and ask? Some
Yeah,
people listening are just hearing these things for the first time. What should they do?
sure. Yeah, I'm a little bit biased because I'm with Charles Schwab, and I think they do a very good job. So they
Hmm.
have a feature called FindMyInvestmentAdvisor.com.
Hmm.
So you just put in your zip
Okay.
code and you'll get a list of registered reps that are in your vicinity that you can start to interview and ask questions about.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Excellent.
and we can provide that link later.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah,
Yes, and I'm glad that you said that because I do have links in the write up on YouTube. So if you're listening on LinkedIn or on Instagram, be sure to come over to my YouTube Ask Dr. Walls 525 page. Those links will be in. If they're not in right now, they'll be in shortly after the show. So, yes. All right.
that's great.
All right, Brian. So let's see what else. You talked about the family dynamic work that you do, and then moving into this idea around the psychology around finance
Sure,
and financial DNA. What is all of that?
sure. So, it's interesting because you and I have studied developmental psychology, and I always loved Eric Erickson because
Mm-hmm.
he's one of the few, before positive psychology what came out with Martin Seligman in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I really gravitated towards him because he talked about what are the stages of a healthy development versus disorders.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think you and I spent a lot
Yes.
of hours studying disorders
Yes.
and dysfunction, and it's a little bit depressing to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I guess I gravitated to the sun rays of Eric Erickson's work, and I
Yeah.
remember his stages of development. And please don't press me to name all of them right now, but I do remember, the first one, trust versus mistrust,
Yeah.
right? And this happens right when you're an infant. And from
Mm-hmm.
my interpretation, I'd love to hear your take on it, but really
Mm-hmm.
is that, that does the infant, when it cries, will it build a trust that the world will respond to that cry
Mm-hmm.
in the form
Exactly.
of the mother's milk from the breast or uh, being wrapped in a cozy
That's
and
soothing.
swaddled, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are
Mm-hmm.
all things that would give a feeling of being taken care of, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so if you think about the innate, if you think about growing up, Freud said, give me a child from 0 to 7 and I'll show you the man.
Mhm.
And there's something to that, that the first 5 to 7 years that we are, growing up in an environment, a lot of times we don't have the prefrontal cortex development of language to understand what's going on.
Correct.
But we have the unconscious that's always on, tape recording basically everything that's
Mhm.
coming in
Mhm.
and absorbing. I like to say absorbing like a sponge, right?
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
absorb the environment, what is said verbally, what is
Mhm.
not said non-verbally, which, as you and
Mhm.
I know, is very high percentage of
Loud.
communication,
Loud.
60,
Yep.
70% or
Yep.
thereabouts.
Yep.
And then meta communication, what's said but really is not said. That meta communication part, the undertone, the intent of
Yes.
the message, right?
Yes.
So uh, when you look at all these things, you had to say, oh my goodness, our relationship to money and how we interact with money is really formed in those first formative
Mm.
years, right?
It's so
And
interesting because
it,
people would not think about it coming that early. But
Right.
like when I think about my relationship with money and building it, it was definitely somewhere between 3 and 5 years old. Like I remember
Mhm.
incidents of it and wanting to hold on to it and being
Yeah.
afraid
Yeah.
specifically that my older brother would take it from me.
Sure. Well, yeah. Well, there you had fear where it come in. So it's interesting about that because one of the first steps into understanding this is working with a financial therapist or somebody who has the skills in this area to
Mhm.
really do an introspection of understanding your relationship to money.
Mhm.
Because really what happens, as you know, um, I have a diagram if maybe you want to bring that up, but
Yep.
I can share
Let's
that, or
see.
are you going to bring it up?
I gotta say, let's see. Can you share it? I
Yep, I
saw
can
it pop
share it
up. Oh, you do it again. It just disappeared. It was there and then it left.
right here. Okay. Let's see here. Um, there we go. Beautiful.
Got it? Okay, let's see. All
All
right,
right.
there we go.
Great. So if you look at this, right, at the end of the bubbles, you have your own money personality, your relationship to money, but it gets formed at the first bubble. Your money story gets formed by basically what your thoughts, your feelings, that meta communication that you absorb, right? And it
Mhm.
really starts unconsciously because, again, you don't have the prefrontal cortex of language to really make sense of it, right?
Mhm.
So if your parents fought over money, right,
Mhm.
you would pick up the tension and the anger and really the scariness of money, right?
Mhm.
If there was a celebration around money, then
Mhm.
you could start to move that money has a higher intrinsic value than maybe people
Mhm.
in the household,
Mhm.
right? So if
Mhm.
you had an overreaction to getting money, that might be like, whoa, what is this that gets more hugs and kisses
So
than I
much
do,
attention. Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Right.
and I love what you just said with attention, right? The word, it's very important, the wordsmithing that goes on as far as attention, right? So where you put
Mhm.
your attention is what grows, right?
Mhm.
So if you avoid money, well, that's going to grow. If you
Mhm.
pay attention to the money, that will grow, right?
Mhm.
So I often ask, there's two things. Money is a magnifier,
Mhm.
okay? So if
Mhm.
you have a healthy relationship with money and you get more money, you'll get more of it. But if you
Mhm.
have some fissions, as I talk about, the cracks in the ice, right?
Mhm.
If you have fissions in the ice, they always said don't ski on the fissions because you could fall into a crevasse. Well,
Okay.
that's exactly true when it comes to your financial life. If you have
Mhm.
some negativity around emotions and you get more money, it's going to magnify those negative emotions,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Um, and so I asked the second question: where does money go? So I ask
Mhm.
you, where does money go? If it's an entity, if it's a form of energy, where does it go?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that's it's a great question. For me, I look at it, I literally break it down into currency. And so I
Hmm.
look at it as, current,
Yep.
SEAC.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
right, so it ebbs and flows just like the
Yep.
sea, it has the tide. So it goes out, it comes back. It goes out, it
Yep.
comes
It's a
back.
form of energy, right?
Yep, yep.
So back in Norwood Fontbonne Academy, where you and I went, I remember learning
Mhm.
what a heat unit is,
Oh,
right?
you're good because I don't remember that.
Yep. That
Go
was third
ahead.
grade. That was third grade, and a heat unit is a form of a calorie.
Oh, okay.
So if you think about money, money is an exchange for a heat unit.
Mhm.
People
Mhm.
exchange their time for money.
Yes.
Eight
Yes.
hours on the job, that's 8 hours of labor, 8 hours of burning calories for somebody to earn
Mhm.
that money.
Mhm.
But it's also
Mhm.
energy. So it's a form of energy. So a
Yeah.
calorie is energy. So money is
Mhm.
energy. So where
Interesting.
does money go? Money goes, and here's the
Mhm.
drum roll, please.
Would you like a tambourine instead?
Money goes to where it's treated the best.
Oh, y'all better get that down.
It's so obvious, but yet so sophisticated, right?
Mhm.
It's like water seeks its own level, right? So money
Mhm.
goes to where it's treated its best. And believe me, money has a consciousness that knows who's treating it the best. Okay? And
Mhm.
so that's what money does. Now, what do you do with money, right?
Okay.
Money is about your thoughts,
Oh, wait
your
a minute,
feel.
Brian. We got
Yep.
we got a we got a where is it? I'm not sure if it's showing up. We got a wow on that one. Go ahead
Okay.
in the
Uh,
comment
in
section.
the
So go
comments.
ahead.
That's
Yes.
great. So, that's what money does. It
Mhm.
goes to where it's treated the best. Okay, it's energy, and totally constantly looking for that level
Mm.
to match it. Really, if you think
Mm.
about matching
Mm.
energies, right?
Mhm.
And so, what do we do? Well, I just told you that we have innate personalities, and we'll talk about that in a second. We
Mhm.
show up with red hair and what we call gene expression, right?
Mhm.
But sometimes our environments suppress genes. There's research in social economic research that talks about really bad environments will actually suppress gene expression. So
Mhm.
that's incredible to know.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so that's why social economically challenged areas, they have a double burden because of the
Hmm.
environment, right?
Hmm. Yeah, you got my
So,
mind really going. I'm trying to stay
oh
on
yeah,
focus.
I
Yeah,
hear you.
but you
I hear
already know.
you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, once you get me started, forget about it. And so we have thoughts, feelings, ideas, opinions, hypotheses, and beliefs around money, right?
Mhm.
And I have this chart up because it shows you a thought is just a thought. I tell my students, if you have an opinion or a thought, that's great. You'll have another
Mhm.
one in 2 minutes,
Hello. Less than
right?
that. Yep.
And we're in a world where left and right are fighting each other over thoughts and opinions, and they're
Mhm.
not even their own. So it's like,
Mhm.
just chill out.
Mhm.
But really, when you start to think about a hypothesis, which I've taught my children from a very, very young age, don't come to me to talk to me about anything unless you've formed a hypothesis,
Okay.
right? Which means you
Mhm.
put some thought into it, you've done a
Yep.
little research, and you have
Yep.
a little theory, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So our hypothesis, and then belief, and then dogma and conviction. Now,
Mhm.
conviction's when something you would die for, or you have a
Mhm.
strong, strong conviction about, right?
Mhm.
It's proven true for yourself. So, but a lot of people get into a bad, false, negative feedback loop around their beliefs or
Yes.
hypothesis or even opinions
Yes.
because they adopted it from their Aunt Sally or
Yes.
they adopted it from
Yes.
their Uncle Bob. And
Yep.
it sounds a little bit true, but it's a truism that is skewed and it's not really proven, right?
It's not
So
factual.
it's not factual. So
Right.
we absorb these things and we kind of do a hodgepodge because we don't have formal training
Mhm.
of financial literacy. We put together a hodgepodge from our legacy. And so the wealthy families, they have a language, and you talked about it initially about jargon and vernacular. And I
Mhm.
tell my students, there's two movements right now. One is saying let's dumb it down and make it easier for people to understand, right?
Mhm.
I'm not
Mhm.
of that camp. I understand that camp that we had to make it a little bit easier to digest. I totally understand that. But if you
Mhm.
really want to respect people and help give them tools of empowerment, you actually give them vocabulary and language to
Yes.
adopt the vernacular and the jargon.
Yep.
Because the financial industry is full, just like the medical community, it's full with jargon to basically keep you out,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So if you can understand the
Yeah.
jargon and spend some time understanding that language, just like you
Yeah.
would understand ZY right hatchback hike,
Yeah.
from football, like those
Yeah.
long, quarterback
Right.
plays. If you can memorize that, then you should definitely be able to memorize different terms around financial services.
And I'm glad that you said that because I tell people all the time we may speak the same language, but we're speaking different languages,
There you go.
right?
Yep.
And so we learn the language of the industry. We learn the language of, we learn the language of money. We learn the language of investment. We learn the language of psychology.
Yep.
So, right. Just to let you know, Philip said, just read The Psychology of Money. Great book related to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I've read that book. That actually is from a non financial therapist. He's a journalist. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Moselle, I think was his name. Um, Great book, excellent book. Because sometimes people who are not in the thick of the weeds can see the weeds a little bit better, right? So
Yeah.
he's a
Yep.
journalist that did a great job of breaking down kind of the behavioral steps. So that's a great entry level behavioral
Mm-hmm.
finance book.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So just to finish this point, when we get into this kind of journey of
Mm-hmm.
cultivating beliefs and narratives, what I find is that if people are open to it, we do an assessment, a personality assessment, based out of Hugh Macy and the group Financial DNA out of Atlanta. I have no
Mhm,
affiliation. They're just a good group. They do a great financial DNA personality assessment where they're
mhm.
taking the big five personalities and building upon it.
Okay.
So if you're extroverted or openness or neurotic or
Mhm,
the big five personalities, then you can actually understand your money personality on top of it. Are
Mhm.
you an initiator? Are you a strategic thinker? Are you a
Mhm.
facilitator? And so I think this helps to understand kind of your risk profile
Yeah.
too,
And
because a
that's
lot
the
of times,
link that you sent me?
yes, yeah,
Okay, so everyone, again, I will post that in the write-up, so you can be sure to check that out afterwards. Again, that's on my YouTube page, Ask Dr. Walls 525. Go ahead, Brian.
beautiful. And so when you look at this, your money personality, your money archetype, and not to get too much into it, but to really understand, we all can understand introvert, extrovert, right?
Mhm.
We all can understand a saver or a spender, right?
Mhm.
So I'm a habitual spender. I'm a reformed habitual spender, right? And I was so bad that I corrupted my wife to spend, and she was a saver. So
Mm.
I overspilled and overflowed onto her and
Mm.
created her into
You
a
were an
spender, right?
expert. You were an
Right. I was
expert
I was really
spender.
good at.
Mhm.
And so, but she did a great thing before I corrupted her, which was she showed me how to use an Excel spreadsheet and form a budget.
Mhm. Nice.
So that been married 22 years, thank God, and
Mhm.
we're at a point now where we have money dates. We review our budget every Saturday morning after pancakes, like
Excellent.
I say, because that's a great time after pancakes because
Yes.
you got the carbohydrate high. And so it's a journey. It takes a
Yes.
process, right? But her personality is 180 degrees different from mine.
Mhm.
So it's about having a lot of patience and being able
Yes.
to adapt and to improvise around those areas.
Yeah, and I just want to chime in and say this. I'm so glad that you said a couple of things. Number one, right, that we each come with our own money personality that we need
Hmm.
to be aware of. That's one. And self awareness is key in that.
Yep.
The other thing is that if we are partnering with someone, be it a spouse, romantic relationship, even friendships, because sometimes they choose to share money, it's important that we learn what that is for us, right?
Yep.
What that
Yep.
is for each of us and have that real conversation.
Yep.
Now, if you're choosing to participate in a relationship that deals with finances, it is also important that you have meetings regularly to review the progress that you're both making and what your areas of growth are as
Sure.
well. I know a lot of times in relationships, it's like, here, you're in charge of the money, and then this person, it's not a care for them.
They
But
assume that role. Yeah, that's
yes,
right.
yes.
Yep.
But that one, it's not financially fair.
It's not fair.
And two, in the event that something happens to, and we've seen it, right? Clinically, I know I've seen it, when something happens to that person who is the lead financial person, it leaves the other person completely aloof
That's
and
right.
unaware. And
Yep.
again, that's not fair. So
Yeah.
it's important to have these types of meetings that you're talking about.
Absolutely. It doesn't serve each other. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And that one of the things that when I work with couples, and I started over 20 years ago doing pre-Cana with the Catholic Church at St. Joe's University and University of Pennsylvania. So I've seen
Hmm.
a lot of couples, doctors coming out with over $300,000 of debt and saying, how do we even survive this?
Hmm.
So there's good problems and bad problems. I understand that. But we always go back to the different personalities and how each household, because you would think, I heard this the other day, that every family is like a cult.
Mm.
And
Mm.
that and not in a negative sense, but in
Hmm.
kind of a neutral sense. That's kind of
Hmm.
true. Every
Hmm.
family has its own kind of lineage and
Yep.
philosophy.
Yep.
So that's great. So a little bit of that. So the beliefs that let me just talk about some of the beliefs that we adopt, right? So money is the root of all evil.
Go ahead.
We've heard that before, right?
We have heard it, and
Yeah.
so many
And if
people have adopted it, and it's not even the proper statement.
and say you came in contact with a wealthy individual when you were younger, or maybe and they were negative to you. Well, that's going
Mhm.
to have a lasting effect. Maybe you
Yep.
adopt that, And if you look at the Disney cartoons, they say, Scrooge is evil. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
like, there's
Mhm.
a lot of biases that are conscious and unconscious.
Mhm.
So I'll talk about these biases real quick. And
Mhm.
um, money is your friend to be shared.
Mhm.
That's a positive one.
Mhm.
My grandmother said, "Money's your friend." She actually said
Mhm.
that. And my brother and
Mhm.
I, two different personalities, one
Mhm.
introverted, one extroverted.
Mhm.
He took that message to say quid pro quo, which means
Interesting.
um, my friend does something for me, then I'll do something of equal value for him. If he helps me
Mm.
move the furniture, then I'll go and help him do yard care,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So there was this quid pro quo, very neutral,
Mhm.
very good.
Mhm.
Mine was uh, crunch all you want, we'll make more. Spread it around, and buy all the lunches and candy for all your friends.
Yes.
That was kind of how I interpret it,
Yeah.
and so it's very very interesting
Mhm.
to so. And then my father said to me when I was a young lad, he said, the way you spend money, he's like, like a drunken sailor, you're going to be borrowing money from your older brother eventually.
Mm.
And I was like, ah, you're crazy, old man. You don't know what you're talking about. Sure enough,
Mhm.
when I was 21, I borrowed $5,000 from him,
Mhm.
right? And then
Mhm.
it dawned on me, like, oh my God, what kind of voodoo did he just place on
Right.
me,
Right.
right?
Right.
Right.
Right. What
But
is
I
this
noticed it was
self-fulfilling prophecy?
right. It was totally. So, but I had to understand, oh, there's something here to my personality
Mhm.
that I like to spend, right?
Mm. Mhm.
So, so only money can be made by hard labor is worth having. It's another belief.
Mm. Let
Most
me say
people who,
this, as people are listening to
yeah,
these, I want you to write down, and you can put them in the chat as well.
good
What are
idea.
some of these beliefs that you were taught, some that you were told, whether you ascribe to them or not, and some that you've created on your own, either
Hmm.
positive or negative. It's your choice. They're really neutral. It's what we ascribe to them, whether they're positive or negative, right? How
Right.
they
That's
impact
right.
our life.
Yep.
So be sure to put them in there, because as you're going through some of these, Brian, they're probably triggering
You bet.
people, right?
Sure.
And there's some that are so deeply embedded, like a thorn or like a splinter,
Yep.
that right skin has grown over top of it, that you don't even realize it's there
Yep.
until it's hit in a certain way.
Yep.
And
Scar
so
tissue.
as you're going through these, I think you're starting to unpack some of
Yep.
that scar tissue,
Yep.
and we're giving people encouragement and permission to dig in there and uproot it, and as you mentioned, replace it, right? So how can you take that and reframe it so that it is a money message that works for you, and to your words, right, will then magnify what it is that you want, because money goes to where it is treated the best.
That's it. That's it. So thank you for that. Yeah, and if you want to type into the chat, some of your beliefs, we would love to talk about that.
Mhm.
So I'll just rattle off a couple. Most people who are very wealthy have inherited the money. Money goes to where it's treated the best. There will always be enough money. Taking risk is bad. There's only so much money in the world. Money brings you happiness. Not having money brings you happiness. I don't deserve money. I'm not a
Mm.
good saver. Money is not
Mhm.
important to me. If you
Mhm.
don't have a lot of money, if you have a lot of money, you got it unethically. A
Mhm.
lot of people hold that thought.
Mhm.
People are poor because they're lazy.
Mm.
Money doesn't grow on trees. More money,
Mhm.
more problems. We see this in our
Mhm.
songs,
Oh,
right?
all the time. Mhm.
What he's saying there is not more money, more problems. He's talking about that magnification of money.
Aha.
Okay,
Come on,
so
break down the biggie.
that's
Break
it.
down.
That's it. So the
Y'all
notorious.
don't know Brian was a break dancer. So
Oh,
yeah,
don't
so go
start.
ahead.
Don't start. You're gonna turn red. That was really good too, actually.
Yes, you
Um,
are.
so, oh, you don't know. I'm into roller skating now. So I'm bringing it
Oh,
back. We're
okay.
bringing it all back. As long as my back can handle it, we're bringing it back. So yeah, these are incredible, incredible
Mhm.
biases because they turn
Mm.
into long-term beliefs.
Realities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what happens from that? Well, you create biases of loss aversion,
Mm.
recency bias,
Mhm.
disposition effect, anchoring, status quo. These are all
Mhm.
behavioral finance terms that really
Mhm.
talk about how um, we don't get out of our own way,
Come on.
right? And we
Yeah.
become a hindrance to our own success, our own
Yes.
issues, right? So
Yes.
that's why there was an article in, I think, Barron's just recently that talked about the future of financial advising. We're
Mhm.
all, us who are in the industry as advisors, helping clients. I've been
Mhm.
in holistic fashion my whole life, so it's not new for me. But the new financial advisor studying for their CFP today is
Yes.
learning about behavioral finance, is
Excellent.
learning about the emotional holistic approach, which I call the behavioral approach,
Mhm.
right? Which is doing that discovery in such a way that gets a complete picture of who you are, not just how much money you have
Mhm.
and what your
Mhm.
goals are, right? Those are kind of
Yeah.
futuristic, but taking a step back and maybe doing a little introspection. The problem is we just don't have enough advisors that are trained in this discipline.
Yeah. There's a couple things I want you to go back through. There were a couple on that list that triggered some thoughts in me, and it made me really think about, right, what is your money mindset?
Yeah.
And I think if people took time to answer that question, there were ones that you had on there about lack versus abundance,
Yep.
right? There's only
Scarcity
so
versus
much.
abundance. Yep.
Scarcity, right. And I
Yep.
remember even professionally when we were in school, and it was like, well, a psychologist makes this amount. And I just rolled my eyes and I was like, that might be true for you, but that's not going to be true for me because that is not, but you talk about financial DNA,
Yeah.
that is not part of my
I
financial
I
DNA
cannot pay my
reality.
student loan with that salary. Right.
No, I
Yeah.
can't.
I
Like
know.
I'm not going to have the life experiences that I am going to have. It's
Yep.
not that I wish I have. No, I'm going to have life experiences and they require more financial reality
Sure.
for me.
Good.
And so now therefore, what does that look like for me, right? And so if I had adopted that mindset, then I would have stayed in a certain frame
Sure.
and then I would pass it on,
That's
right?
right.
And the fact that I work with thousands of people on a yearly basis, I'm energetically passing that on, and to your point, magnifying that, and it becomes a reality for
Yep.
some. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, I'm here to let you know that like the sky is not the limit. Beyond the sky is the limit.
Yeah.
So, and really, there is no limit.
Yeah. And it really started with you when you were younger, like you were saying. You got a good education around it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the first step is people are like, well, this sounds great, but how do I get involved with this? It's a
Yes.
little bit of, yeah, we can send you a questionnaire to help you
Mm-hmm.
find out your financial DNA. But there's also the process that I take clients through is to ask them, what was your first interaction with money or
Mm-hmm.
something of intrinsic value? Maybe it was a
Mm.
family heirloom. Maybe it was something that was. So for me,
That's a
I
good
have a great
one.
story that I share with people, which is we used to go down the shore in Ocean City and go on the merry-go-round on the boardwalk.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was younger, they still have it's still there today a merry-go-round where they put out the arm and you get to reach your hand out and grab either a silver ring or if you're lucky, you get a brass ring.
Really? Is this
Yeah,
in Ocean City, Maryland, or
Ocean
New
City, New
Jersey?
Jersey. Yeah,
Okay.
New
Okay.
Jersey. And so I don't know if, according to OSHA, this is still available for kids to put their arms out and grab something. But back then they did, and they did when
Mm.
my son was born and when he was a little bit older. So when I was on there as a kid, and I got lucky. I grabbed the brass ring. You had to be on the
Mm.
outside and a
Mhm.
horse and grab it. And you know what I did with that brass ring?
What's that?
I stole it. I did. Good Irish Catholic boy. I knew it had, it was like precious. Oh, I love it. It had intrinsic value because this everybody wanted this brass ring, and I was like, oh, I'm going to take this thing home. Maybe it's going to do something incredible for me. Well, sure enough, I carried that guilt my whole life
Mhm.
until my son. I brought him to the same merry-go-round, and he's 4 years old or whatever. And when I got him on the outside, and I'm like, I put my hand out, and sure enough, on the first pull, guess what we pulled?
The brass
The
ring.
brass ring. And I was like, "This is incredible, Seamus. This is awesome. Let's go." And so we got off and we started walking out. And guess what we're going to do?
Take it again.
We're going to steal it again. And then I don't know, the Holy Spirit or something came across me. I was like, "Oh no, I can't do that." And we
Mhm.
turned and we gave it back to the man. And guess what he
Mhm.
said?
What's
"Thank you
that?
so much. This was my last one."
Wow. He said, "Thanks for coming back. I remember you when you were little."
Right, right. It's like we have a warrant for your picture on the post. So
Wow.
that tells you, and something
Yeah.
healed inside of me,
Amen.
and I repaired a generational thing there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's a very simple thing, but it's very, very deep.
It is deep.
Okay.
It is.
Which is, so when I ask people, what was it? And then I had my grandmother came over from Ireland. She would go to Ireland every other year and she'd bring back
Mhm.
these incredible coins that look different from our coins.
Mhm.
So we would
Mhm.
have a fun time looking at coins and rolling up coins and pennies and all that. So I got this great feeling that money is a fun thing.
Mm.
It's enjoyable. So there really wasn't
Yeah.
this. But then as I got older, my parents got divorced and there was a lot of animosity about, child
Mhm.
support and
Mhm.
payments and everything else. So I got
Mhm.
to see the other side of that. which
Okay.
is a very tumultuous and traumatic experience
Mhm.
around money.
Mhm.
Okay. And you can
Mhm.
carry that with you too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so people, you'll notice this in the artistic community. They'll say, I hate money. I don't deal with money.
Yep.
Those were the biggest group that I worked with because I'd help them get language and help them,
Mhm.
deal, because they're on the right side of the brain usually, and I help them
Mhm.
with the left side of financial
Mhm.
issues.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
that tells you a telltale sign that, boy, they ran into a wall somewhere,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
they didn't have the coping mechanisms to deal with that stressor. So it
Mhm.
was a distress. It was a negative stress that wasn't turned into a use stress or a positive
Right.
stress.
Or
Yeah.
right, it was a message that was adopted because unfortunately a lot of times, and I am purposely using the word unfortunately, I know that's a judgment word. Um, a lot of artists are told that what they're doing is a hobby and a career cannot be made out of it.
Wow.
And so once again, there's a separation between money and heart, money and passion, right? Money and purpose for
Hmm.
some, money and art. When the reality is we all value and appreciate art in
Yep.
all of its various
Yep.
forms. So it's unfortunate. I literally was texting with a parent last week and it came up again and I'm like, and I know this person to love art. And it's like, why would you instill that seed? And what is it going to grow to? Is this going to be a seed that becomes a weed and ends
Hmm.
up being a killjoy? Or is
Hmm.
this a seed that this child, this young person can extract or
Hmm.
change its purpose and make it purposeful for
Sure.
them?
Yeah.
Right? But and to your point of it being a magnetizer, will it magnetize additional messages like the starving artist?
Yeah.
Like you're not a real artist unless you've done this or done
Yeah.
that, you know? And
Very,
so
very, very good. I like that.
mhm,
That's exactly right. The
mhm.
nomenclature around it is these cultural norms of,
Yep.
basically status quo bias. You need to get away from that, right?
Yeah.
And that's why services we provide at Exemplar, we work with professional athletes and artists
Mhm.
specifically, people that are in the entertainment industry, whether they're doing video productions or professional athletes. And I always say to them, you have a one leg up already because you have self discipline,
Come on.
right? So if you're a professional athlete or an athlete or, in college level or whatever,
Mhm.
or if you're an artist, you had to, you have a level of discipline to push
Yep.
yourself, what they call intrinsic motivation,
Yes.
intrinsic locus of control
Mhm.
to really feel that you can have an impact. And so that's
Mhm.
more of positive psychology, and we help our clients that way.
Excellent.
Because yeah, society and cultural norms. We haven't really gone into cultural norms, but we can do a
Mhm.
whole talk about different
Yeah, we'll have
cultures.
to do another show on
Yeah,
that one because there were so
absolutely.
many things that you said where I was like, "Well, that's a culture piece," but if you bring it
Yep,
up, y'all are gonna go on that tangent.
that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
and
right.
they're
And
important. We're not saying
absolutely,
tangent isn't right, they're very important, so we
they're
wanna
very
give
very
it the
important.
we wanna give it
Yeah,
the time that it needs and the
yeah.
attention that it needs.
Yeah. So just like, so we meet people where they are. We understand their cultural norms and their biases, and
Mhm,
we're sensitive to those, obviously.
mhm,
But it's really about in a lens. Behavioral approach is a lens of positive psychology. It's
mhm.
meeting people where they are
Yes.
and really having an expectation that they can get better,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I've never met a child that if you placed a high expectation, they didn't meet it.
Mhm, mhm,
Setting
mhm.
the bar,
Yep.
right? So I would challenge everybody that's listening today, what are you doing today to move that bar a little bit higher today and tomorrow,
Come on.
right? Financially, with your financial
Yeah,
life. And
yeah.
and it could be just reading an article,
Ooh.
all right? And 2, 3 minutes a day and this is the work that we do. We tell people to start reading USA Today money section,
Mhm,
which is at like
mhm,
a sixth grade level. So it's not going to
mhm,
tax you in any way.
mhm,
They have audio books you just plug in and play and just listen to something. So that's
mhm.
all part of the exposure therapy, really, of get jumping into the financial world.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I do, you said, what are you doing to set your financial bar higher today? Was that the
Yeah,
question?
that's right. Yep.
Okay. So I'm putting
Yeah.
it in the chat. So one of the things that I will do with my client, and I do it with myself as well, is the spend $1,000 a day. Now I go big. I create a spreadsheet where I spend $1 million a day. All right.
Hmm.
So to get used to that money mindset.
Okay.
and learn that money, they're just numbers,
Yep.
right? That's
That's
all
right.
they are, and to get comfortable with it.
Extra
And so
zeros.
I've had,
Yep.
exactly, and I've had people say, I can't do 1 million. Like that just seems so unrealistic to me. Let me start with 1,000. And
Sure.
it's like, okay, like you're saying, right? We meet the people where they are
Yep.
with the intent to raise them up.
Yep. But I'd also stop and say, I can't do that. My mother used to say, can't means won't.
Mhm.
So I'd
Mhm.
be like, why won't you do that? And
That's
then
right.
that opens up the conversation of,
Yep.
please tell me about your first interaction with money.
Yep.
What
Yep.
was money discussed openly in your home?
Yep.
What are some of the family financial taboos that you have,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
And that's a whole nother topic. But if you really look about financial taboos, it's interesting. The Financial Therapy Association has come on pretty strong now, but
Mhm.
the research is from 20 years old, basically saying that financial or therapists were had an inability to look at this area of the psyche because they had taboos
Mhm.
around money
Mhm.
and they wouldn't even
Mhm.
research it.
Mhm.
That's incredible if you think about that.
Mhm. That
That
question's for you, Brian.
Yeah. What type of services do Ryan offer individuals like manage investors? Okay. So we offer the full suite. So it's very holistic. So personal financing, budgeting. I love helping people with budgeting. And really it's about meeting you and understanding your goals, short term, intermediate, long term, and matching the financial instruments to get you there, right?
Mhm.
For example, right now interest rates are at 5.5%, between 5.25 and 550. That means people should be buying CDs with extra money. They should be
Mhm.
buying 1 month, 3 months, 6 month CDs.
Mhm.
CDs are certificates of deposits. They are
Mhm.
FDIC insured. They're one of the
Mhm.
safest things you can buy in a bank,
Mhm.
right? And I learned that lesson from my grandmother. So what is old is new again. Back in the 70s, we're back in the 70s with the misery index and inflation and all that.
Mhm.
So we provide services, personal financial services. We offer alternative investments for ultra accredited investors. We have a suite of products, both tax strategies, alternative investments, but more importantly, wealth planning. So
Mhm.
we take you from start to finish, and we not only look at your quantitative data and find out what are your goals, but then we align your purpose of your money with those goals, right?
Mhm.
Which goes back to your relationship with money. And if
Mhm.
we do that with the family, we basically educate your kids as to how they have a healthy relationship with money,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So we then offer family meetings, family education, and family services around that. We work with
Mhm.
families, businesses, business owners, and families of wealth. And in
Mhm.
addition to that, we work with individuals that are just maybe starting or couples that just got married and are looking to, um, you know, learn how to be disciplined to save as they spend, because in your
Mm.
20s and 30s and early
Mhm.
40s is your primary spending years. But we need to
Mhm.
do both. We need to be able to pay down debt, save, and spend. That's more
Yeah.
of my philosophy. It's like a three bucket approach, if you will.
Mhm.
And so that way we align ourselves with your goals. And listen,
Yeah.
nobody knows that life happens more than me. So
Mhm.
when you get hit with an illness or a tragedy or something happens and throws you off
Mhm.
course, that's why
Mhm.
working with an advisor is very important. I think the research
Yes.
shows that it's close. It's over 300 to 500 basis points of increase working with an advisor. That's adding
Mhm.
5% to your investments every year working
Mhm.
with an advisor,
Mhm. Mhm.
because you have that communication,
Yeah.
and having a coach. So we really act as
Yeah.
kind of a life coach,
Yep.
in a holistic way, with a
Yeah.
little bit of psychology peppered in.
Which is helpful, right?
Yeah,
So for people, I have put the link in for exemplarcompanies.com so you
yeah,
can take a look there and read more about them. Check Brian out on there. Is that the best way for people to contact you
yeah.
if they're
They can email
interested?
me, Brian Brogan, all one word, Brogan at exemplar-wealth.com.
Okay.
So Brian Brogan at exemplar-wealth.com.
Okay.
That's probably the best way to do it.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, as you can see, there's so much about this topic. Um, you know, Real quick, I'll talk about, I remember when I was younger, driving with my dad in Chestnut Hill,
Mhm.
and I was in Norwood, and I had some feelings about a girl
Mhm.
in seventh and eighth grade, and I wanted to ask my dad about these butterflies in my tummy.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, Dad, I really like this girl, and and I was looking for advice. Do you know what he said?
What'd he say? What he
Crickets.
Oh.
He didn't know how to approach it
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
in the Irish Catholic tradition, we didn't talk about sex.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you think about it, I was raised that you don't talk, to be polite at a party, you don't talk about money, politics, or sex, right?
Right.
And
Or
I'm like, well,
religion.
what else is there to talk about that's fun? Come on
Right.
now, no, so that's just a little humor to show that every family has a taboo,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. True.
And it's a cultural thing that's generational,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
some of the work that we do with families is part of our process. We do assessments around
Mhm.
different personalities. We do a
Mhm.
family questionnaire about kind of the cohesion and communication of the
Mhm.
family, and if they're aligned with their purpose. And so these are all things that we do to help communication. But one of the main things we'll do is a genogram, which is really a family tree,
Yeah.
to understand the narrative,
Huge.
right?
Yes.
Because if there has been trauma and taboo around money,
Yes.
we need to break that narrative, like you had
Yeah.
mentioned,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
the trauma research actually shows that you can create a new narrative,
Mhm.
a fake story, if you will.
Mhm.
And if you say it loud enough and long enough, it becomes true to your
Mhm.
neurochemistry.
Come on.
So think about that. You can actually repair your past by actually
Yes.
implanting a new narrative story
Yeah. You
that's a
know,
little bit more kind to
yeah,
you.
as you said it, I literally got chills all over my body
Yeah.
because something that I do is every day, there's a statement that I make and I put it on my phone so that it goes off at a certain time of day, but
Hmm.
I say it, and that is that money comes to me easily and effortlessly throughout the day,
You
every
bet.
day.
Every day.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And so, right, I set my mindset to it, I set my energy to it, and I watch it come in. And when it
Hmm.
comes in, I say thank you, right?
Yep.
I have
Yep.
gratitude, right? So
Yep.
I am grateful now. Actually, that's how I started. I am grateful now that money comes to me easily and effortlessly every day, continuously throughout the day.
Sure. I mean, Dave Ramsey starts and finishes and answers every phone call with, "I have more than enough."
Mhm.
And guess
Mhm.
what? He has more than enough.
Right. Right.
Okay. So
Make
yeah,
it a fact.
so what you're talking about is manifesting, of course, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
entrepreneurs and people in money understand that. But I do want to caution people. I am a
Mhm.
big manifesting believer. Okay. I believe
Mhm.
in kind of that narrative. But
Mhm.
you have to do the fundamental work
Come on.
before you do that.
Right.
You had to understand your relationship to money
That's
if
right.
you're going to be wielding it and commanding it
That's
and
right.
making declarative statements as to who you are and what you are.
And let me be clear too, and I have to go. JJ Hannah is, I always give her credit for this. It was back in the 90s where she said to me about being a good steward. And I did not grow up in church, even though I went to Catholic school. I didn't go to church, so I didn't know what that word steward meant.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "What does that mean?" And she explained to me what it was. And I said, "Oh." And Brian, I literally spent, if she said that to me in 1997,
Mm-hmm.
what are we, 25 years out, 26? I've spent the last 26 years working on my stewardship so
Mm-hmm.
that I could be able to say at the end of 2023, I'm an excellent steward. I am a
Mm-hmm.
phenomenal steward. And I watched my ebbs and flows, my feelings, my connection, my
Mm-hmm.
relationship, my understanding individually versus when I got to, my husband and I got together and looking at my relationship with my. So when you talk about doing the work, literally last night on my Greatest Blueprint show with Dina, that's what we talked. It was entitled "Don't Call for Love Unless You're Ready to
You're
Do the
ready.
Work,"
Yep.
right? Unless you're ready, and we broadened it to everything. You call in, people say, "I want to be a millionaire." Do you know how to even manage a million? Do you know how to manage 1,000?
Yeah.
right? Do you know how to manage 100,000?
Do you know what a T-bill is? Right.
Do you know what these things are?
Right.
And so I know we're coming up on the end of the
Yeah.
hour, and I'll share this one quick story. So learning how to manage it, one of the things that I did was I bought some fake money that
Mhm.
looked real, right, off
Mhm.
of Amazon to get used to it, because it would be like, oh, if I ever become a millionaire, I'm gonna give this person this amount, this person this
Mhm.
amount. And so one day for practice, it was like, let me go give Edmund, my husband, $1 million. And when I tell you, my whole body said, and I was like, you can't even
Uh,
give him a fake million? How in the
oh,
world are you going to give him a real million?
yep.
And I had to work through
Sure.
what I was experiencing in that moment, because when the time comes, notice not if or when the
Yeah,
time comes, I need to be able to do it joyously, easily, and so forth.
that's right.
Yeah, yeah.
Excellent.
All right. Well, Brian, thank you so much for joining
Thank
us
you.
today. You're welcome. This will not be the last time. People are saying, look, I'll give you this one for the road as we get ready to close out.
Thank you, Deirdre.
All right.
Very kind words.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much for hosting, and we'll talk again.
Yes, we'll talk again soon. All right, everybody. If you have not subscribed to Ask Dr. Walls 525, be sure to do that. Oh, Brian, they're asking for your email again. Can you put it in
Sure.
the chat room?
Let me. Where do I do that? Oh,
All
I see
right.
it. I got
You
it.
see
I
it?
got it.
You got it?
I got it. Yep.
Okay. All right, y'all. It's coming up, and I will also put it in the write up as well. Again, if you're joining us on Instagram or on LinkedIn, be sure to jump over to YouTube to my Ask Dr. Walls 525, subscribe, and you'll also see the information in the write up. You're welcome. People are saying thanks, Kat and Brian.
Thank
But
you.
yeah, we got a whole bunch of
God
thank
bless.
yous. All right, Brian, we'll talk to you.
Alrighty.
Everybody, continue to live your greatest life. God bless.
Take care.